you guys have had a busy couple decades.
Yeah, and we've been stoned the whole time.
What role has cannabis played in your lives, not just as individuals, but also as creators?
A big one, a big role. Yeah, I mean, we're from Vancouver, British Columbia, which is, so we grew up in an environment, at least in our insulated, area that we grew up in, that it was very accepted. It was around, and it was socially.
That, like, as kids, we didn't comprehend.
Yeah,
we thought a lot of the world was like that, and we didn't realize Vancouver was kind of special.
It was, and then I moved to Los Angeles and saw that it really, when I was 16, I moved to LA, 17, and I found that it was culturally viewed very differently there, and it filled a much different role in culture there than it did in Vancouver, and I really saw that we had an opportunity with our work to help make people view it the same way that we viewed it, and that it was a really additive part of our day-to-day lives, and so I would talk about it on talk shows all the time in a way that every talk show host has come to me, and David Letterman came to me once, and I was just like, why do you keep asking me about this? I've talked about it so much on your show, and he's like, because no one else will talk about it, and I know other people, it's a part of their lives, but he's like, I'm just fascinated that you're willing to talk about it. And at the same time, we were being very productive. We were producing a lot of movies and making a lot of movies, which also I think was playing against the stigma of someone who used as much weed as I did, and do. And then we really tried to start incorporating it into our work in a way that also kind of broke some of those stigmas. 4 Year Old Virgin is an interesting one because there's a scene where me and Paul Rudd are playing video games and we're smoking weed and we're talking about other stuff, but it was actually one of the first scenes in a movie where people are smoking weed and they're not commenting on it. It is just a part of what they're doing, and they aren't pariahs on society. They're just people hanging out, and weed, it's as though they're having a glass, they're drinking or something like that. And that was, I always viewed that as a big step in a good direction. And then, the meantime, we were writing Pineapple Express, basically.
Yeah, Pineapple Express was the moment where we realized how many people love cannabis and enjoy it, and it makes a difference to their lives, and they feel like it's a normal part of their lives. And it was the first film that was like a giant financial win for a studio that was about cannabis. They were always small, weird movies for stoners, about stoners.
Yeah.
And this was just, it put it in a different lens that I think cinema never had.
It was a real movie with a real budget, and it
was a comedy, but it didn't treat it like a joke.
No, and it had a story, and it was like a very thoughtful, analysis of the dynamic between like a drug dealer and someone that they sell drugs to, and it's to this day by far the movie that the most people come up to both of us telling us they like, and I think it's because it really appealed to all these people who were forced to secretly love weed and not themselves be able to talk about it or not have it be a part of the culture that they were ingesting and that other people were ingesting in a way that they truly related to. So I think we saw that it was weirdly cathartic for a lot of people to see this big piece of pop culture that was accepted in mainstream pop culture that was all about cannabis, and the relationship between people who use it in different ways,
And now you're starting a brand.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Tell us about Houseplant.
We had a few things that we wanted to focus on. One was education, making it accessible for people who were new to it, and the other was kind of reverence or elevation, I guess you would say. I think it's a product that we have a lot of reverence for, and it's something that's traditionally been hidden under people's coffee tables or in the back of your drawer or something like that. And we wish it was something that you were proud to display. Not just that you didn't have shame in displaying, but one step above that you were actually proud to own and proud to display.
We managed to create a design that lends itself to informing the customers what they're getting and how it's to be used.
Exactly. So just giving each strain its own simple color palette, and then within that, giving each color palette a logo that has lines that correspond to kind of the desired effects of each strain. You know, I think those simple things really lend themselves to a design that we think is very beautiful and something we would be proud to display, and also is starting to educate people on the different types of cannabis.
Because a lot of people think that they had a bad experience with cannabis because of the cannabis, but a lot of the time it's you're not using it right, you're not using it in the right manner,
exactly.
in the right location.
In a world where there are marketing restrictions, things like that, a lot of regulations, again, it became an exercise in creativity. So one of the first things we thought of is we created vinyl records that were strain specific, and they each had a mix of songs that were kind of made to, at least in theme, go along with the different strains of cannabis, and each one also was designed with the same color palette as our strains. So it to us was, again, a very simple way of associating the strains with certain activities, certain times of day, certain uses, while playing into the design and what we think is just beautiful about the product itself, and something that, again, we would be proud to display in our homes. So it's a lot of boxes to tick, but I think we found a way to do it that we ourselves were proud of, yeah. Unfortunately, right now, we are not 100% comfortable with the climate in America as far as its legality and how people are being treated still, in as far as how the war on drugs is being enforced in America. But rather than just sit around and hope that it gets better, we are gonna take a very active role in creating a climate in America that we feel comfortable being available in. And so we're starting to work with a lot of organizations in America, again, to deal with people with records and employment and trying to fix the wrongs that have happened during the war on drugs. And it's a very similar thing here in Canada. I think a lot of progress has been made, obviously, and a lot of headway has been made, but there is still not enough being done in our eyes. To be specific, there's a bill, C-93, that is going up to be voted on that we feel needs to be amended. Right now it calls for the pardons for people with minor offenses.
How can we sort of join this with you on that end and sort of ensure that it's an inclusive industry for everyone?
I think specifically trying to hire people who have been unfairly targeted by this war on drugs, you know. It generally targets marginalized groups at a exponential rate. Even though every group of people uses cannabis the same amount, if you're a minority, you're like several times more likely to be arrested for having it. And in America especially, it can be outrageously detrimental to your life. So I think the thing that everyone can start to do is hire people who would be deemed unhireable because of these offenses, and to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. And that's something that in Canada we can all do as well. Until their records are deleted, we can make the fact that they haven't yet been deleted meaningless by ignoring the fact that they have these things on their records and hiring them anyway. And again, I think that's something that can be impactful today, not as a hypothetical hope in the future. Yeah. How's it going, man?